News and Talk, WAOK Black History Series.
Blackness, keep on.
Conversations with Derrick Boazman. On this episode, Derrick sits down with Willie Mukasa Ricks, founding member of the Lowndes County Freedom Party that became the Black Panther Party. He's credited with coining the phrase Black Power. He's the founding member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and was shot along with Arthur Langford Jr. protesting to allow black nurses and doctors privileges to work at the hospital. And now, Conversations with Derrick Boazman, featuring history maker Willie Mukasa on News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome again to the WAOK Conversations with Derrick Boazman, our Black History Series. The past conversations, we've talked to history makers and those who have been eyewitnesses to history. And today we get the esteemed honor and pleasure of talking to Willie Mukasa Ricks, Willie Dada Ricks.
You gave me a lot of names.
He got a lot of names, a lot of titles. Undisputed. This is an interview I've waited for years to do. I've known him since I was a teenager, and I don't think I ever had opportunity other than on radio to really sit down and ask some specific questions of Mukasa, as we call him affectionately, about his involvement in the movement. So, Baba Mukasa, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Derrick, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm glad to be here with you.
I do know that you just celebrated your 81st birthday a couple of days ago. Sunday,
81.
81 years old. If somebody was to ask, who is Willie Ricks? Tell us your beginning. Where does it all start? Where were you born? Tell us about your family structure.
My family structure, my mother and father was born in North Alabama, out in the cotton field. And I used to go to the country when I was a young boy and pick cotton for $3 a day, over 12 hours a day. I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I have had a family of 8 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And I found myself in the movement in 1960, fighting against segregation and oppression of our people.
81 years old, that puts you in the late 40s, mid 40s when you were born.
43.
43. So talk about what you saw as a young man that prepared you for the work. We're going to get into all of the various organizations and the work you end up doing. But what was life really like? Because a lot of time we glaze over and said, I picked cotton. I don't know what that experience is like. Talk about what it was like in the late 40s and 50s for African Americans in, the rural South.
Well, we lived in shacks. We lived on dirt roads. We lived out in the middle of cotton fields and things like that. We had to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, go out in the cotton field and work. We had to walk to school where white kids rode buses, and that the people were oppressed, and they were just living off the land and doing their best they could, and they were oppressed people. And I complained about working 12, 13, 15 hours a day for $3 a day, and I asked my mother about it, and she said, well, I work for a quarter a day. And I was scared to ask her what her mother worked for. So I was just born in the middle of segregation, where black people had to say yes sir to white people, and all kind of injustices were happening to them, and we were not considered humans.
Yeah. So you grow up as a lad, you work in the cotton fields. When do you consciously understand that you wanted to do something different? Or when did you see the movement, if you will, and said, I want to be a part of this? How did you get from the cotton fields to walking alongside King and Malcolm and a bunch of others? What happened? At what age did you consciously wake up and say, it's time for me now to take a stride toward freedom?
Well, after living in segregation and just living the life that all other black people were living, and going to school and going to segregated schools, going in the back doors and stuff like that. By 1960, students began to sit in. At A&T College, 3 students went down to Woodwork. That was a store where people go and eat and shop or whatever. And they had lunch counters in these stores. Like Richards had a lunch counter that we can go in. And that we went to those lunch counters. They went to those lunch counters and sit in, and they put them in jail. And when they put those kids in jail, the movement spread like wildfire, and all the high school students and college students began to sit in, and the sit-in movement was born. And that affected me. And that myself, I had quit school in the 7th grade. And I was oppressed in elementary school, beaten. I mean, they'd beat you with big, thick pieces of wood.
Who was doing the beating? Who was doing this?
The principal.
Oh, okay.
And the teachers, too.
Right.
They point you out and beat you. If you're a minute late for class or a minute late for school, they beat you.
This is a black school, white school?
Black school. I know white folks didn't go to our school.
Right.
And live in our community.
So you decided
that
the 7th grade, this ain't what I signed up for.
Well, after they flunked me twice and what have you, and my twin sister knows we're in the 9th grade, I'm in the 7th grade, I said, this ain't working. And so I began to rebel and shoot hooky and go into the streets. And I became a little street guy hanging in the streets. And then I got a job at a hotel, and I was a waiter. And I used to wait on white people and big parties of 100, 300 or 400 people, and I served them and whatever. And that we had to go in the back door and serve white people, say yes, sir, and what have you. And then in the middle of me being in that, working at that hotel, the sit-in movement started.
Yeah.
And my twin sister knows we're in the high school, and I was in high school too, even though I wasn't registered as a student. I would go to school every day and hang out at the school. And in the midst of that, the sit-in movement started in Nashville and other places, and so we rebel-roused and talked about going down there, let's go. And we went downtown to Cresses and Woodworth and those places, and we sit in. And when we sit in, white people rioted and beat us and threw bricks at us, threw balls at us, and beat us up in the place, and we fought back. And then the next day when they mobbed us, we was ready for them. When they came and started fighting us, we started fighting them, and they threw bricks and balls. We were throwing bricks and balls, and we was right in the back door of the main street called 9th Street, just like Martin Luther King used to be an all-black street. But we want an all-black street, 9th Street, that was our street, and we bagged out there, about 10, 20 of us, and we bagged out. They threw bricks and balls at us, we threw bricks and balls at them. So we had, in Chattanooga, we had the first riot to take place in the civil rights movement. And then the next day, we said, we'll be back. And we came and everybody got off their jobs early, and we took looked like 1,000 people down. It might have been 500. But we took them downtown, and we broke windows and fought and whatever, and we made the national news, and Dr. King and the NAACP and those, they send representatives to run at Chattanooga to teach us about nonviolence. And one of the person that was in Chattanooga with me at that time was C.T. Vivian. Mm-hmm. And C.T. Vivian began to guide and direct me, and I became a soldier with C.T., and I was like in the leadership of the youth and what have you, and I just kept demonstrating and protesting. They burnt crosses in my yard. They threatened my mama over and over again to kill her. They ran over my sister and attempted to murder my sister, ran over in a car and what have you. So, but I just kept going. Before you know it, I was headlining in the newspaper as a young man. And matter of fact, they even had me headlining in the paper one time with a great leader in Africa named Patrice Lumumba, who they had just killed. They killed during that time in 1961. They killed him, cut him up in little pieces, and then put his body in acid. Lumumba, the Congo. I was also in the newspaper as a freedom fighter with Fidel Castro. And some of my friends started calling me Castro. So my name and energy just got big, and I became known. And at that time, early on, the students were demonstrating everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's a lady that was an organizer, and she organized, went through the South, investigating lynchings and stuff. Her name was Ella Baker. And Miss Baker worked with Dr. King. And when she was in Montgomery with Dr. King had an organization, and SCLC, and the organization was made up of 3 people: Wyatt T. Walker, Ralph Abernathy, and Dr. King. And it was Ella Baker that told Dr. King, Martin, you need a staff. And she helped Martin come to Atlanta, get an office on Auburn Avenue, and she went in there and put the office together for him. And she, helped the preachers get it together. And then the sit-in movement was getting stronger, and that she asked Dr. King to give her $850 where she could organize the students. And we organized them at Shaw University.
Right.
And we went to Shaw University. Dr. King came, and he wanted us to be a youth group under him. And Ella Baker told us, no, you don't want to be under these preachers. You need your own autonomy. So we formed the student, because it was mostly student. It was using nonviolent. It was coordinating what it was doing. And we saw ourselves as an organization, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And we had, and that's how we started. And we, on our organization, we saw nonviolence as a tactic, where Dr. King's organization saw it as a way of life. And so that was our difference. And also one of the other differences we had is that Dr. King was the leader and the preachers were the leaders. But SNCC didn't consider them to be the leaders, or we didn't consider ourselves to be the leaders. We said all the leaders, all people have leadership ability.
Right.
And everywhere SNCC would go, it would go into Albany, Georgia. We organized the Albany movement, and then brought the local people in and made them the leaders. Went to Selma, we organized the Dallas County movement, brought the local leaders in and made them the leaders, and we served them, and we demonstrated, we protested, we had sit-ins, and then it was SNCC. After we got beat so long and so much, we decided that we were going to go and try to register to vote the sheriff and these white racists out of office, and we tried to register people to vote. They bombed us, they machine gunned us, and they killed many people. They killed Mr. Damon in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Charlie McParker. They lynched Cheney, Swan, and Goodman, murdered them, took them out of jail and murdered them. And that so we had a mass movement in Mississippi and Alabama, and we were organizing and protesting in Atlanta. Atlanta had asked the civil rights leaders to leave Atlanta
To stay out
as
of
is.
Atlanta. Right, yeah.
And they said that they would not mess with Atlanta. But SNCC didn't agree with that. We were the young people, and we began to protest in Atlanta, go down to Riches and other places, and protest, demonstrate, and what have you. And we created a movement right here in Atlanta.
Let's start. You've covered a lot of ground, right? A lot of historically significant individuals you mentioned. Go back to Ella Baker.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about Ella Baker as a organizer, because it was unusual to hear of women with the kind of power and autonomy of a Ella Baker, but you see the emergence of Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, these incredibly strong and gifted orators and organizers. Talk about, you meet Ella Baker and she challenges you all to form SNCC. Tell me some of the people who were at the early formation of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and where was SNCC founded? I know y'all had several, you had an office here over near the Georgia, what is now the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
And we also had an office on Raymond Street, right off of Hunter Street, what used to be Hunter Street, now it's Martin Luther King.
Okay.
It was at 6 Raymond Street. And Ella Baker was, she pulled us together, told us to have our own time, and she said, strong people don't need strong leaders, and that y'all share the leadership. And this is what we did, and that we used nonviolence as a tactic,
Right.
and we went across the South, and that we took chances that Dr. King didn't want a chance. We got on the Freedom Ride buses and went through Alabama, Mississippi. In Montgomery, we went to Montgomery, Alabama, and there was a strong lady here named Ruby Darius Robertson. And Ruby Darius was also there when the movement got organized in Raleigh, North Carolina. John Lewis was there. Marion Barry, who came to Mayor Washington, D.C., Julian Bond, and many, many others that so many. And that once we got organized, we sent our organizers out. And the Freedom Ride, going back to the Freedom Ride, we rode the buses. We get on the buses in D.C. and ride down through the South in integrated groups. And when we got to Montgomery, Alabama, they beat the people so bad that they were just laying in the streets. And the police stood there and watched it, even took parts of it. And in Birmingham, when we got to Anderson, Alabama, they threw bombs on the bus, and the bus was burning, and they tried to hold the door to keep us from being able to get off the bus and what have you, but it was very dangerous. And also in Montgomery, when we was in the mass meeting, Dr. King was in the meeting, the white folks surrounded the meeting, and thousands of them came out there, and we thought they were going to burn the church down. And Dr. King and them got on the phone, and they begged Kennedy and the government to send troops there to save the people that was in the church, and that they did. It ended up sending troops and federalized the National Guard, where they would have to protect the people in the church and get us out safely. And then we got on the buses and went toward Jackson, Mississippi. And when we got to Jackson, Mississippi, they beat us and put us in jail and put us in prison, Parchment Prison.
So, Mukasa, talk about, you go so quickly through all of these transitions of history, right? By this time, you're in your 20s, and you have decided, apparently, that the movement, that this was the work you wanted to do. But you mentioned beatings, you mentioned buses being set on fire. What kept you wanting to stay involved? And what was the folks back home, what was your mom and them saying? Because they'd been threatened, they'd seen the danger in this. Make us understand the real danger that was in organizing in the 50s and 60s for a more just America.
Well, my mother and my family and my little nieces and nephew of the state that my mama kept, they were put in danger. And that, and my mama, the FBI and all of them, police department, they thought I was the #1 terrorist in the world. And even Albert Gore, his father, used to call my house and threaten my mama and tell them they better get me out this movement and all that kind of thing. And that, so I just faced death and destruction in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then when C.T. Willie went to Martin King and said, Martin, we got a guy here so bad and so tough and whatever, and he's militant. And Dr. King said, well, we don't want him right now. And Ruby Darius and John Lewis, they was glad they took me. And C.T., I think he gave me the money to get on the bus to come to Atlanta and become part of SNCC. Okay. And but CT was always encouraged me, gave me some assignments, and matter of fact, CT gave me my first microphone, CT Vivian. Yeah. We were protesting against the police chief who was a killer in Chattanooga, and they needed to vote him out, and he gave me a mic right in front of a project. And I started making those speeches, and it got so fiery that thousands of people just started coming out to vote. We put the mic right up over the project, and thousands came out to vote, and the turnout was so good that the chief of police that we were fighting against, he came and brought the police in and put me in jail, and I was in the back of the powder wagon saying, go vote, go vote, go vote. And CT was so proud of me that he went and just told everybody about this great little soldier in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, yeah.
So SNCC, you go to SNCC, you build your rapport there. In SNCC is John Lewis. Who else? Some of the major players in
Jim
SNCC at the
Foreman.
time. Jim Foreman.
Cleve Sellers, who was shot over in South Carolina when they tried to integrate the bowling alley. The students from South Carolina State went down to the bowling alley, and when it came back to the campus, the police and white people got around the campus, and when they were coming out for lunch, at dinner, everybody gathered on the yard, they just started shooting down into the crowd, and they killed 4 or 5 people and wounded about 6 to 7, and it's called the Orangeburg Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And Cleve was involved in that. We have so many names. Bob Mance, who lived right there on Chestnut Street, what used to be Chestnut Street, and many other people right here in Atlanta came out, and they involved. Matter of fact, Pratt, what's his name?
Larry
Pratt was involved, and he tell people he was involved. He knew Dr. King. He knew them Hosea Williams and all that, and he tried to explain to people that he was involved in it,
and he
tried to make people acknowledge him that he was a freedom fighter.
Let's talk about you moved to SNCC. SNCC kind of pushes SCLC to be more militant. At some point, another young man emerges that becomes like your comrade, Stokely Carmichael.
Yes.
Talk about this Stokely, who's West Indian accent and organizer par excellence, a serious firebrand. How do you meet him? What was the meeting? How did y'all connect?
I met him in demonstration and protest somewhere in the movement, sit-in or Freedom Rise or whatever. We met. I don't remember the time, but me and him, we just became great friends and worked. Now Stokely Carmichael, who's now Kwame Ture, he was a student at Howard University. And when he was a student at Howard University, they had a group called NAG. And those students went out and they protested and demonstrated and confronted the National Guard and beat up and whatever. But then they joined the civil rights movement, they joined the Freedom Rise and came down south and demonstrated. Now, before SNCC had chairmans, and Marion Barry was the first chairman of SNCC, and then you had later had John Lewis in 1963 became the chairman of SNCC, and then in 1966 Stokely became the chairman of SNCC. Now when Stokely became the chairman of SNCC, we started talking about Black Power. But before then, here in Atlanta was a very segregated city.
Right.
And matter of fact, they even built a wall out there on Peyton Road.
Yeah, the Peyton
and
Wall.
This was, we called it the Berlin Wall. And SNCC took a group of people out there, and we forced Ivan Allen and them to take the wall down. And that
and talk a little bit about that, because we hear a lot about it, but people don't realize the wall was put up so black people could only live on one side of the wall. It was never intended for them to go, because Peyton Forest and the communities we know now along Peyton Road was white.
Yes.
But in the 60s, you see a emergence of a middle class of people, teachers and others start buying homes out there. And it was very clear that the mayor, the leadership of the city said, stay in your place.
Ivan Allen was a segregationist, and he built those walls and tried to keep us out. And at the same time, Atlanta was all the officers in Atlanta were white. Everybody in political, mayors and city council and all that was white. And matter of fact, John Lewis and myself and some other SNCC people went right here to City Hall, and where they had a big lunch counter in there.
Right.
We went in there and we demonstrated in that City Hall, demanding that black people be able to eat in City Hall.
What was the scariest movement you were involved with, or the scariest effort, or the one that made you understand I could really die? And if we're going to get to where I know you could say you could die because there was assassination attempt on your life. But when was it ever in your mind that I may have to give my life for this movement?
Well, yeah, from the beginning, we were beaten and jailed and life-threatening, and Ku Klux Klan burnt crosses in my mama's yard, and that the neighbors, they threatened me so great when I was a young boy demonstrating in Chattanooga that the neighbors would come and sit in front of my yard at night to keep the Klan and other groups from coming in there to harm me and my family and my mama, because the Klan came there and burned a cross right in our yard. And they threatened us, and they had our telephone number, and they would call my mama and just threaten her and do all kind of terrorist things. Like, for an example, one time they called my mama and say, "We finally killed that nigga, and we got his body at so and so place in Atlanta, Georgia, and his body's in a house there," and it scared them so much that they had to try to find out where I was and find a number for me, call the police in Atlanta and gave them the address, and they had to go there and look in that house and see if my body was there.
Right.
And those kinds of things, but they used all kind of psychological tactics
Games.
against my mother, and that her heart would be beating fast, or she would get nervous, and white people would come and looked in our house, looked in our windows, trying to see me to sit up in Chattanooga, paid 12 businesses and preachers money. Their job was to tell when I come to town. So they saw us as terrorists, the same way they see Bin Laden and all them other people that they want to kill. This is the kind of atmosphere that Dr. King and all the SNCC and our movement had, and we had witnessed that so many people being killed and murdered that, and everywhere we go, they'd run dogs on us. They would beat us with sticks, billy sticks. They would put us in jail and beat us and all kinds of things. I've known to put somebody in jail and handcuff them up to the wall and let them hang down, and then take cigarette and light and put to their testicles and stuff like that. So they were really crazy, and that put us in jail, then take you out of jail and take you out and lynch you, and that kind of thing. So we knew death and destruction. We knew that we knew from the get, 1963, we knew Medgar Evers got killed. We saw Medgar Evers get killed, and we attended his funerals and stuff like that. We saw the bombing in Birmingham when they bombed the church where we were teaching nonviolence and marching up the street facing dogs and bombs in jails, and they were bombing the black neighborhood and the middle class neighborhood in Birmingham so much we started calling Birmingham. And what have you, and that the black people, even though we were nonviolent, the preachers and all of them, the community had to take guns and walk through the neighborhood at night and just hold them guns, protecting their houses, trying to keep the Klan, the police, the firemen from coming in there bombing the houses and what have you.
Talk about meeting Martin King, and what was Martin like and Ralph Abernathy like? What were the men? We see these, mythological, almost gigantic figures, but there's a wonderful picture that you have. You are laughing, marching with King. He's laughing back at you. I don't know what joker, who told the joker what y'all were laughing about, but there's a moment of levity. Great picture that you always share. But what was Martin really like when you got a chance to sit down with him and got to know him and he got to know you?
But Martin was a very serious guy, very serious brother that put his life on the line. He marched, he demonstrated, he protested, and what have you. Now, Mukasa, I became close to King probably in Birmingham and South Georgia, because SNCC had all these great educated people from universities and what have you, and that Julian Barnes and John Lewis. John could stand before a microphone and talk, but he couldn't fire the people up like Dr. King and Abernathy and Y.T. Walker and other ministers. And then all the SNCC people, we had rallies, but when they needed somebody to fire the people up and to make them shout and ready to march and ready to fight and ready to face dogs and face bombs and beatings and go to jail, then they would call me.
Right.
And I would go to the mass meetings, and they called me to come to different cities. I'd go in there and fire them up and what have you. And like Julian Bond, when he ran for office here in Atlanta, he was a very educated guy, but he could talk, and he sit down and talk anything. He could write. But in terms of getting up in front of people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people talking, he wasn't that kind of person. And so when Julian Bond ran for office, I would get up and make a speech real fiery and then say, vote for Julian Bond, present Julian Bond. He'd get up and say, thank you very much, please vote for me, and sit down. And that was Julian.
Right.
And then, so I became the spokesman and the voice of SNCC in the field. And so now in Birmingham, when we were demonstrating and protesting, we had mass rallies every night.
Right.
So SNCC would always put me on the program, even when I was probably 20 years old, on the program with Dr. King and all the other preachers. And I'd get up there and whatever, and represent SNCC and preach and talk about the movement and marching and whatever. And that went on with Dr. King. And then I just became known as a very, very, very militant guy. The FBI considered me to be one of the most dangerous people in the movement. I don't know where all that came from, but I went out there and demonstrated and protested and did what I had to do. So I ended up being around Dr. King. And in Selma, Alabama, where they beat our people when we said we're going to walk from Selma to Montgomery, 50 miles to the governor's office, to protest us not having the right to vote and the violence that they use on us in Selma. So Hosea Williams and John Lewis and SNCC people, Willie Boazman, Bob Manson, they all got together and they marched across the bridge. And when they marched across the bridge, the state troopers and police and all of them, they just ran the horses into them.
Now that's Bloody Sunday.
Bloody Sunday.
Yeah.
They ran the horses into them and beat them pretty bad. And that got national attention. Yeah. And when they got national attention, we all called all our forces to come to Selma. We're going to confront the state of Alabama. And we went there and we started, said, we're going to march. We're going to take this march on. And we were getting ready to march. The federal government, Judge Johnson, federal Judge Johnson, passed injunction saying this march cannot take place. And Martin and SCLC, the ministers, they explained why they would have to obey the federal injunction and they would not march and they would negotiate. And that SNCC said, damn the injunction. Yeah, we're going to march. Anyway. And that we had one group saying, Martin King group saying march, and SNCC saying, they said don't march, and SNCC was saying march, don't obey the injunction. And when Martin would be in the church talking to the world news medias from all over the world and clergies, and SNCC had 1,000 or 2,000 people outside surrounding the church, and they put me on the steps, and I was speaking to thousands of people, and I had the people screaming, march, march, march. And that Dr. King, everybody knew that they couldn't control them. We were ready to fight because we had been beaten and bombed and hurt. Yeah. And the people of Selma had seen that. And so they were going to march. And they were out of control. So Dr. King, Andy, and those made a deal that we didn't know with the state troopers and the federal government, I think, that let them march across the bridge, and they would march to the red light, and marching to the red light would not be breaking the injunction. Right. As long as you don't go past the red light.
Turn
and we
around
went down
and
there and
back.
got to the red light, the state troops had 100 or more state troopers out there on horses and whatever. And they told Dr. King, Martin said, y'all break this march up. This march is illegal. Break it up. And Dr. King says, sir, we're on our way to Montgomery. Excuse me. And they said, you can't go march to Montgomery. Break it up. And Dr. King said, well, will you just give us a moment to pray?
Right.
And they started praying, and they called up a rabbi and called up Ralph Abernathy, and all of them said a prayer, but none of us shut our eyes. And, we weren't about to do that. And that Dr. King and them prayed, and then Dr. King got up, and we marched in front of Dr. King, me and James Owens and all of us, we marched in front of Dr. King ready to take the blows first. And that Dr. King ordered everybody to turn around. And Snick didn't know that. When he said turn around, we said, what we turning around for? What we turning around for? And by the time we figured out that Dr. King and we considered a sellout. Mm-hmm. And Andy and them had sold us out, made a deal and sold us out. And we called them, all of them, y'all Uncle Toms. And so Snick took his, but the point I wanted to make is that I was on the steps talking to thousands and pushing Dr. King them into that march. Right. And Dr. King marched, but they forced him to turn around. And when he turned around, they called it Turnaround Tuesday. And we called it Sellout Tuesday. Yeah. And we went to Montgomery. We ain't march with y'all no more, SCLC folks. All y'all Uncle Tom. We going to Montgomery. And we went to Montgomery, and we went to Tuskegee, and we went to Alabama State. And we round the students up, got about 100 students or more to come up to Martin King's church, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And we went into Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, opened the door and went in, and we used that as a staging ground to attack the Capitol because Dr. King's church was less than a block from the Capitol. And we started demonstrating against the government and George Wallace and the racists at the Capitol, and they brought in trucks and all kind of forces to try to force us out. Yeah. They put you surrounded by the police. If you leave the march to go to the bathroom, they wouldn't let you back in and whatever. Mm-hmm. So Jim Foreman told people that don't leave the march. Say if you gotta piss, just piss on the ground right there in front of the police. And they said that these children were pissing on the ground and pee running under the state troopers' feet. And that, but we were at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, right. And the Dexter Avenue folks, the pastors and all the other folks, and they tried to get us out too. And we refused to leave, so they cut the lights out and whatever. But we used the church, and so I like to tell people that I was the pastor of Dexter Avenue Church for about a week until the police and those came and forced us out. Yeah. But we demonstrated in Montgomery, and the demonstration got so great that Dr. King had to leave Selma and come to Montgomery because we were getting attention at the Capitol building. And he came there and we led demonstrations and protests and whatever and tried to calm it down where he could get back to Selma. And then shortly after then, they killed a woman named Viola Liuzzo. Leaving the march, some police or FBI, whoever in the Klan, rode up next to her, and she was taking the riders home and shot her, and killed her, and that was on the Highway 80, and that was in Lowndes County. And then Lowndes County was a county that you had 85% black people and one registered voter. And they used terrorism against people. So Stokely and myself and other SNCC people, we went into Lowndes County and started organizing people to vote and whatever, and educate them and whatever. And we confronted them, and they shot in our houses. They killed Jonathan Daniels. They killed him, and they killed other people. And they killed three people in Selma, Alabama. They killed a little boy named Jimmy Lee Jackson when they went into his house and were beating his mom up, and he said something, the police just shot him. So we had terrorism all around us. So, but I was on the programs with Dr. King. So in Montgomery, I preached with Dr. King every day. in Montgomery, in Birmingham. I was on the program with Dr. King. He saw me as an extreme militant. And then by 1960, during that time too, Stokely and I went to Lowndes County. It's a terrible place. We started the Black Panthers there.
Right.
And we started the Black Panther Party in Lowndes County, Alabama. We were known, they said this, we called it the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, and we used a panther for a symbol.
Right.
Because the Democratic Party wouldn't let you in their party, and the Republicans wouldn't let you vote in their party. So in order for us to vote, we started our own party, and that we used that party to go against the Democratic Party and whatever. But because we had a Black Panthers, they called us the Black Panther Party. We said, yeah, we'll be a Black Panther Party. And we became known as the Black Panther Party. And then Hewitt Newton, Bobby Seals, and other young people from around the North were so impressed, they came and asked us could they form chapters, and we helped them form chapters of the Black Panther Party. Right. And then shortly after we left, when we were in Lowndes County, in May of that year, John Lewis election came up inside of SNCC.
Yeah.
And we took John Lewis, and we were all in Nashville at the staff meeting, and we voted John Lewis out. And John was hurt because he thought he had that job for his life. And when we voted him out, we said that you're too much like a preacher, you're too much like the nonviolent folks and whatever, and that we need a stronger and more aggressive leader than you, John. And so we voted John out and put Stokely in. And we put Stokely in. Shortly after we put Stokely in, James Meredith, who was the first student to integrate the white university, and he integrated the University of Mississippi, where they rioted and tried to kill him, and people got killed over that. But James Meredith became a very known figure. And when James Meredith became a figure, and later we forced them to pass the Civil Rights Bill. And we forced them to pass the Civil Rights Bill. They passed also, we forced them to pass a Voters' Rights Bill because they were afraid that we were going to tear up America if they didn't pass. They were forced to do it. And so when they passed the Voters' Rights Bill, we had been bombed, killed, murdered, all kinds of things had happened to us just for trying to register to vote.
Right.
And that so James Meredith decided, said, look, y'all done killed people in Mississippi, you done lynched people, you done blew up houses, burnt down over 65 churches in 1964. You killed Cheney, Swan, and Goodman, killed Mr. Damon. You beat Fannie Lou Hamer, and you beat many, many other people for trying to register to vote, wasting terrorism against them. And then how you going to just pass a voters' rights bill and think people are going to come out to vote? So he got him a big sign, and he started walking from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi, and he called it a March Against Fear, and telling people to register to vote. And the first day he stepped out there, a white man stepped from behind the bushes and shot him in the back with a shotgun. And Dr. King, Stokely Carmichael, Representative SNCC, Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young, Deacons for Defense, we all met at the Lorraine Motel and said, we're going to carry this march on. So we can't let them have a victory by shooting James Meredith. And we had to walk 250 miles through Mississippi. And when we marched there, they bombed us, they beat us, they jailed us, and whatever. But on that march, Martin King saw me be able to mobilize the masses, thousands of people in every town, and we would rally them, and we introduced them to Black Power, and we told them we don't want no freedom now no more. Dr. King's organization was still Freedom Now. We said we want Black Power, and we told Dr. King, we organized Mississippi, and that this is our territory, and Stokely said, if a white man put his hands on me, I'm fighting back. And Whitney Young and Roy Wilkins, oh, hell no, we getting out of here. And we took Martin King through Mississippi, and he got the education of his life when he went down through Mississippi, and we hit him with Black Power so strong that even Dr. King at one point, the day that he went over to Philadelphia, Mississippi, where they killed James Swan and Goodman. Dr. King led a march, and when he led that march and came back, that march, in the middle of the march, a white man ran a truck right in the middle of the march and ran over children and everybody. And when they ran over those children in the march, they had to get Dr. King out of there. When Dr. King came back, I said in my speech, 'cause I would always speak right before Dr. King, I said that when the black people marched in Philadelphia and Dr. King marched and they ran a car through there and ran over all those people, and the people fought back and they fought them white folks. And then that night when the white folks came, the police and all them white folks came in the black neighborhood and started shooting, and we shot back and a white man got killed. That's black power. We need black power. And we need black power. We need power to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves. We need power to have schools. We need power to have decent houses. We need power to have running water in our houses. We need decent jobs. We need power to be able to be paid what white people be paid. We need justice, power to give ourselves justice. We need black power. And all the people started screaming, black power, black power, black power. And then as we hit them in Greenwood, Mississippi, we want black power. And when we got to black power got strong, and matter of fact, Dr. King in one little city, Yazoo City, Dr. King got up and said, no, we don't need no power. We don't need no white power. We don't need no bright power, brown power. We don't need no yellow power. We knew where he was going. And when he said we don't need no black power, all of us was right there around him. Black power, black power, black power. And black power grew stronger and stronger. And when we got to Canton, Mississippi, we were putting up a tent. Well, we were all getting ready to make a speech, and we had a freedom tent. And when we were putting up that tent, the state troopers surrounded the march. Hundreds of people were out there, standing, all of them were out there, Stokely, all of them, and Dr. King. And I was myself, Dr. King, Stokely Carmichael, Hosea Williams, Floyd McKissick. We were all on top of the truck, on the cabinet, top of the cabinet of the truck, and we had a mic getting ready to speak, and we looked up, and the state troopers were dressed in gear, had their guns and everything, getting ready to attack. And Dr. King called a meeting. He said, right here on the top of the truck, he said, look, Hosea Williams and Willie Ricks, y'all cannot go to jail. If we get jail or we get hurt, we need somebody to take our place, and you and Hosea will have to do it. So y'all get off the truck and whatever. And we got off the truck right quick, and time we got off the truck, Hosea and I, we stepped back into a house, somebody's house. We just went in there and got the phone, started looking. And within minutes, they started bombing and tear gas everywhere. Dr. King fell off the truck, Stokely fell off the truck, and me and Hosea, we ran back in there. And we picked Dr. King up. I picked Dr. King up in one arm and had Stokely Carmichael in the other arm, and we were walking, and Andrew Young was walking behind us crying, y'all go back, don't know nothing about violence. Let's get out of here. Let's go. And it was crying. And but they bombed us. But the cry of black power had shaken the world. And then a few months later, the people in Detroit, a rebellion broke out. And I don't know what the police did to the community to make them do it, but at that point, but they broke. And when they broke out, they started burning down Detroit, throwing bricks and balls and the cry was black power, and they killed about 40 or 50 people and surrounded and rounded up all the black men, 20,000 black men, and just put them in jail. And they brought in troops from Vietnam, the 82nd Airborne, and land them in Detroit with tanks rolling down the street. And then, but that didn't stop it, because every city in this country started going up in riots saying black power, black power, black power, and dead bodies laying everywhere. They killed thousands of people in 1967, thousands. And then when all these bodies was laying out in Tuskegee, there was a young man that went to the Army and Navy and came back, and worked with us in SNCC. And he was trying to register people in Tuskegee to vote. Tuskegee is a black city and didn't have but a few registered voters. So we demanded registering Tuskegee, Macon County. One day he was organized and he went down to the bus station, the Greyhound bus station that was in the gas station. And when he went in the bathroom to see it white only, he came out, the owner of the gas station shot him in the head with a shotgun and killed him, Sammy Young Jr. And when they killed Sammy Young Jr., we had Stokely, Rap Brown, John Lewis, Julian Bond, Jim Foreman, and other SNCC leadership. We had a meeting in the office, a press conference, saying that if a black man can go into the Army, fight for America, and come back and can't piss in a bathroom behind a white man, we ain't got no business in the war in Vietnam. Therefore, we oppose the war in Vietnam. And we called on people to come to the streets by the thousands all over this country and demonstrate against the war. And we put people out there to do that. And we put people, the marches just kept going till it grew to tens of thousands of people demonstrating, millions of people. And that was January the 3rd. When we did that, and then after we did that, after we put people in the streets and demonstrating and protest, the march got big. Right. And we demanded that Dr. King and them had to make a decision to either be for the thousands of people, that millions of people that was in the street against the war, or speak out for the war. And that we pushed Dr. King to speak out against the war. And a young man named Vincent Harding, he wrote the speech that why I opposed the war in Vietnam. And he wrote the speech, and Dr. King made that speech. He made one here at Ebenezer. Right. And he invited me and Stokely, y'all come hear me now. And he told us to come on over there and I'm gonna have dinner at my house for you and your SNCC boys. And he brought me, Cleve, Sellers, Stokely, and went over to Dr. King's house and ate. But after Dr. King made his speech, why I opposed the war in Vietnam, and then on April 4th, Dr. King had made his major speech opposing the war in Vietnam, and that's why he called America the greatest perpetrator of violence, the greatest terrorist nation, and whatever. And when he made that speech, he became like Malcolm or like Marcus Garvey, and the FBI said that Hoover and them say, we can't afford another black messiah. And that on April 4th, he made his speech of 1967, and on April 4th, 1 year later, they killed him. And they killed him on the same day, April 4th, 1968, where they could discredit him opposing the war in Vietnam and opposing United States imperialists and the United States behavior around the world.
Right. Let's move, because you gave a litany of history, and we only have a few more moments with you. Let's move to you come out of that movement. We know we win the Voters' Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and we look like we are gaining on, at least legally, legislatively, and making some strides and some victories, right? We see public accommodations open up. We're riding on the front of the bus. Things seem to be taking a turn, but we still got some rivers to cross. You end up in Atlanta. Tell us, how do you end up living in Atlanta? And then you got to take us to Holy Family Hospital with Arthur Langford Jr. How did you come out of Montgomery, out of Nashville, out of your hometown, and how did you end up settling here in Atlanta? You talked about the sit-in movement was a part of that. Was that what really brought you here to where you now have been for the last 40, 50 years?
Yes, in many ways, because the SNCC office was here in Atlanta.
There you go.
So I got a bus ticket, came to Atlanta, and then I was assigned to go to Albany, Georgia, and work with the Albany movement, assigned to Birmingham, assigned to Gaston, Alabama, and assigned to many other places. And then SNCC made me one of their national speakers and put me on the Central Committee and what have you, and I helped organize groups and organizations all over the South, and matter of fact, all over the country. And then they gave me international assignments where I was sent to Africa and to Cuba and to other places to join our movements with the South. Like Martin Luther King was talking about going to South Africa and helping Mandela and those down in South Africa before they killed him. And they also, we joined in with that movement, the Africa movement. Now, also, I'd like to say Dr. King is the one that pointed Africa out to us, because when Kwame Nkrumah got independence
he went
in
to
1957,
the inauguration.
Dr. King was standing right there in the inauguration next to Kwame Nkrumah. And they talked, Dr. King predicted that black people one day started returning home to Africa. And then Dr. King, when he was in Africa, all the liberation movements had guns and they were fighting all over Africa. Kwame Nkrumah arranged for Dr. King to meet with them. And Dr. King told them about his nonviolent movement, and they frowned at Dr. King and said, "Oh, we don't think that'll work." And then they told Dr. King about their violent movement, and Dr. King sort of frowned at them, saying, "Well, we need to be nonviolent." And that, but he met with them, and when he came back, he was saying if Kwame Nkrumah and them could do it in Ghana, we can do it. But we united our movement with the movement in South Africa, Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and what have you. And when we called for black power, that started talking about black is beautiful, our hair, our nose, our lips, and it brought in African history. And we began to learn that Africa is the richest land in the world, full of diamonds, gold, oil, rubber, zinc, tea, and that black is beautiful. And we learned that our women are the most beautiful women in the world. We are beautiful people. We learned that Africa had all the natural resources, diamond, gold, oil, rubber, zinc, tea, copper, pearl. And we learned that we were smart. We built Ghana, Mali, Songhay, Zimbabwe, Congo, and thousands of other great empires. We stood great for tens of thousands of years, and we dealt with astronomy. We gave the world mathematics, science, chemistry, and then biochemistry, nuclear physics, law, philosophy, medicine. And so we gave our people a different perspective and a different idea on who we are. And we say that to say, if you're going to love your people, you need to know your culture, know your history, and be guided and directed by your African culture and by your African roots, and that will make us love each other. And our love must be for Africa, and then you can love yourself and love your people. And the love of your people is always much greater than love of your individual self.
Let's get you meet a young preacher, Arthur Langford Jr.
Well,
you all are demonstrating.
Arthur Langford was in Hosea Williams, was demonstrating. They were called to Holy Family Hospital here in Atlanta,
Which is on Fairburn Road.
On Fairburn Road. They were called to the hospital by the nurses saying that they were being discriminated against because black doctors couldn't work in no hospital here in Atlanta or in Georgia.
Right.
And that they were being discriminated against because black nurses could not head a station over a white woman, over white nurses. And so they were protesting that, and they called in Arthur Langford and Reverend Boone, and they went there and they demonstrated with the nurses, and then Arthur and Dr. Boone, they set up a tent, and they said, we're going to put this tent on the edge of this property, and we're going to stay here until justice comes. And Arthur, who's a young man who, when Dr. King was killed, he wrote a play called The Life of a King. And this play changed Arthur. He was a student. This play changed Arthur Langford's life. He became, and he acted like king in the play, but this carried on, and even his behavior, he began to lead demonstrations and protests and become a spokesman for black people, and speak up for black people and find different struggles and be involved in them. And one of the struggles he got involved in was at Holy Family Hospital. And when we went out there, him and Reverend Boone was there, and they set this tent up. And when they set the tent up, they would stay all night.
Yeah.
And they said they're gonna stay until freedom comes. And I went out there. And I went out to educate with Reverend Boone and Arthur. And I went out there and told Arthur and Reverend Boone, y'all crazy. Y'all sitting out here in this tent at night say, y'all need some guns, man, instead of that Bible. Put that Bible down and get some guns. And they all looked at me and laughed and threw, oh, get away with me with that. And whatever. And within minutes after I said that, the administrator of the hospital and the police was out there with him came out and surrounded the tent, and they started shooting in the tent. And when the first bullet fired, in my mind, I thought about a truck backfiring. And but I looked at Arthur, and his eyes got big, and with all this happening real fast, and then the next bullet hit me in the stomach, and I remember Arthur Langford's eyes, and he sort of jumped up a little bit, and when he moved up a little bit, the bullet hit him in the chest, and they left us out there for dead. And then a mass movement took place about that, and that Atlanta, even though we're fighting for integration through all the 60s, they never greater than allow black doctors to come in those hospitals. Right. None of these hospitals allow black doctors to come in, and that through me and Arthur getting shot, we embarrassed to sit in the state of Georgia to such an extent that we forced them to integrate hospital and let doctors and what have you come inside.
And this is
there.
1972.
1972. April 27th, and that Arthur Langford led that and made it where black doctors can go in all these hospitals, and he did a host of many other things, organized youth group. And one thing I like to thank Arthur Langford for is that he, after he did that, he organized a group called the United Youth Adult Conference, and he had so many youth working with him, and also he called in all the old civil rights people that, cause the movement, they helped Dr. King and the big people, but the regular people that were Dr. King, they didn't have nothing. When the movement calmed down and the money ran out, then they were just left in the street, didn't have money to eat, feed, or whatever. And Arthur Langford told them to come to the United Youth Adult Conference. He would give them money when they come and ask for it or need it or feed them or whatever. And I know I went and stayed with Arthur. I lived in the house with Arthur and what have you, and we demonstrated and protest and whatever. But Arthur Langford become a young Martin Luther King. Yeah. And that's one of the young men I could say that through his history and the work that he did, I'm proud of him. And he influenced a whole lot of young people and made a whole lot of young freedom fighters like Derrick Boazman. Yeah. Derrick was a little boy in college and whatever.
Yeah, I met Arthur when I was 17.
17, and Arthur influenced him so bad that he became a very positive brother. And he have been, as from that, Derrick Boazman have been inspired thousands of people and made thousands of people conscious and woke up people. Like Dr. King say, the number one problem, people walking around here asleep and the world is on fire and all this stuff happening in the world and we don't know it. And he said we need to wake up. And Derrick has become a voice of someone who wake up African people, and he also had been a great part of the United Youth Adult Conference. They got youth groups, youth organizations, youth movements, and he just continued and continued and continued. And so I'm proud of Derrick. And matter of fact, Derrick even took my son, and brought him out there and had him camping out at night,
in the woods,
in the storm, in the woods, and whatever. Yeah. But giving him a certain discipline. And when Derrick got through with my son and influence and whatever, my son ended up going, I sent him to Cuba, and he became a doctor. Yeah. And that Derrick definitely played a role in it, and he's played a role in so many lives of people. And today, when people have different struggles and whatever, they call Derrick Boazman, and he used the radio and whatever he had to influence people to go struggle and help people. Sometimes you have to help them with money, food, whatever, and just go out and speak up injustice. And sometimes Derrick, just like Arthur, he's on the front line of different struggles and battles. And if it's anywhere, I remember when they shot that little boy in South Georgia running through the neighborhood, Derrick had an army down there saying justice for Ahmaud
Arbery.
Yeah.
And
so Derrick has played a great role. And,
thank you.
And, I just say to everybody, thank you, Derrick, and thank you, Derrick, and Black Power to everybody.
I was just watching you all, and one of the great joys of my life was to be sitting in the doctor's office. I've had back issues, sight issues, and I am sitting there waiting on my doctor. right? I don't think I ever told you this.
He told me.
And I'm sitting there waiting on my doctor, and here come WAOK Ricks. This young brother who, when he was about, WAOK could have been about 5 or 6. I saw a picture recently. And he was a chess master and could talk smack with the best of them at 5 or 6 years old. And so when they told me your doctor's a WAOK Ricks, we just hugged and fell out because we know he'd gone to Cuba and study and made a commitment to go back to rural Georgia and practice medicine to help the people. Mukasa, we just about wrapped up. 81.
81, going strong.
Birthday just this past Sunday.
And last year, my 80th birthday,
Oh man,
Derrick
did
got
y'all
a whole
have
bunch
a
of
boy?
folk
Y'all
together,
we had a time.
Had one of the biggest birthdays that Atlanta have ever had.
Yeah, that was beautiful. What do you see the future for yourself, legacy wise? You're young, 81. You get out here and walk and run. You're in great health. What do you see? What do you want your legacy to be? You now got grandchildren, right?
Yes, 3 grandchildren.
What do you want the legacy of Mukasa? You just gave us a history lesson that's unparalleled. You talked about the founding of SNCC. You was there. You created the Lowndes County Freedom Party that became the forerunner to the Black Panther Party. You have been all around the world as a spokesman, and uncompromisingly so. I knew you, but then as a student in the Atlanta University Center, you're the stuff made of legend because you came in on any campus, although they didn't treat you so right at one of them. We ain't going to talk about that one. But you're the stuff of legend, and you're not tired yet. What do you want Baba Adada Mukasa Ricks' legacy to be?
Mukasa Dada. I changed my name when I was in Uganda, the guest of Idi Amin Dada, and that I realized that the name Ricks come from the Ricks plantation, and that meant that I was a Ricks slave from the Ricks plantation, and I didn't want to represent that name. And I know they cut our tongues out and made us speak their language, and I wanted to represent my people. So when I was in Uganda, I changed the name to Mukasa Dada, formerly known as Willie Ricks of the SNCC. I want everybody to research SNCC. And what I want people to remember about me is that all you brothers and sisters out there that's struggling and whatever, and every door that we done open and that you were able to go in, just remember that there was a little guy like a roach and whatever serving you and trying to make the world better for you. And I realized that each one of you can hear my voice today. You're somebody much bigger than me, and I come to just serve you and be part of the forces that's fighting to lift you up, whether you're living under the bridge, in the alley, or whatever. We just come to lift you up, and I'm just somebody that was able to join in with everybody that want freedom and liberation and just help lift my people up. But me as an individual, not important.
Mukasa Dada, thank you.
Thank y'all Africans, and love you, and we will be free, and we will liberate Africa, we will liberate our country, we will liberate our nation, and we will be free. If we're going to be free, we believe in Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism means that all Africans, wherever you are in the world, whether it's Brazil, Cuba, Jamaica, or the Caribbeans, or Africa itself, or living in Europe, we have to come together, and we as Africans have to act as one, just like the Europeans got their European organization, NATO, and they act as one. They control the United Nations. They act as one. And now we as Africans, we got to act as one because we come from the richest land in the world, one of the largest territories in the world, and that land belongs to us. It's been exploited, it's been raped, and some people say, well, Africa is poor. Yes, it's not Africa is poor, it's Africans, because they've been exploited. For the last 500 years, Africa's been robbed by Europe, and that's why the Europeans got all these big factories and industry and cars and electronics and everything because they get the materials from you in Africa. The whole world is on Africa's welfare, and now we got to take over our land and use that to feed, clothe, house, and give all the people everything they need and don't have to use no money. We don't need money. We just have to know that our people need it, and then we build it for them. I'm just glad to be a part of people like Dr. King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Fidel Castro, Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, Lumumba. Google Lumumba. And also, I would like for all y'all to Google my name, Mukasa Dada, Mukasa So thank y'all, Africans. Appreciate being here. And I say Black Power, Black Power, Black Power.
Black Power. Thank you, dear brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Africa.
And that's going to do it for this installment of Conversations with Derrick Boazman, our WAOK Black History Series. We certainly have been blessed to talk to a history maker that's still right here among us. Look this brother up and ask him to come out to speak to your rally. Ask him to come out to speak to your university.
Schools,
sit down and get
schools,
this
community.
history. It's our history. It's our story. We'll talk to you next time.